The house was quiet. A mother stood near the window, watching her little boy outside. He was trying to move his wheelchair over the small wooden ramp she had built. His hands were small, but he was determined. When he reached the top and turned to her with the biggest smile, her heart melted. She didn't care that the ramp wasn't perfect. She didn't care that the wood wasn't painted or polished. All she saw was her son's joy, his little freedom. She had saved money for weeks to build that ramp. She didn't ask anyone for help. The ramp wasn't big, just enough to help her son get through the front door without her carrying him every time. She had slipped her back twice already while lifting him, but she never told anyone. She didn't complain. She just wanted him to feel normal, to move like other kids. That first day with the ramp felt like a fresh start. Her son wheeled himself to the front gate, giggling, watching birds fly by. He had always needed help to go outside, but now he could do it alone. It was a proud moment. The mother stood on the porch, eyes full of quiet happiness. She didn't know it wouldn't last out the next morning. She found a letter in the mailbox. It was from the Homeowners Association. Her hands trembled a little as she read it. The letter said the ramp broke community design rules. It called the ramp an unapproved alteration and asked her to remove it within 10 days. It also said the ramp was unsightly and damaging the appearance of the neighborhood. She stared at the words, not fully believing what she was reading. Ugly? Was it ugly to let her son move freely? Was it wrong to build something that made him smile? She sat down at the kitchen table, holding the letter tightly. Her son rolled in, asking for breakfast. She smiled for him, pretending everything was fine, but inside, her heart felt heavy. She didn't know what to do. She had followed her heart, not any official rule. She hadn't thought about asking for permission. She had only thought about her son. She called the HOA office, hoping it was just a mistake. A woman on the phone told her flatly, "The ramp must go. It doesn't match the neighborhood's visual standard." She hung up without saying much. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring into the dark. Her son was sleeping peacefully in the next room. She thought about the time he had cried, saying he didn't want to feel like a burden. She thought about the way his smile had returned because of that ramp. The next morning, she opened the door to take out the trash and found another note. This one wasn't official. It was handwritten. The words were cruel. "This isn't a charity block. Fix your house." Her eyes welled up. She looked around, but no one was outside. She stood in front of the ramp. It was just wood and nails. It wasn't fancy, but to her, it was everything. It was hope. It was strength. It was love. She felt something rise inside her, a quiet fire. At first, she had wanted peace. She didn't want to argue. But now, she realized they weren't just attacking a ramp, they were attacking her son's right to live like any other child. She wiped her face and took a deep breath. She wasn't going to be silent. Not anymore. That night, after her son went to bed, she sat at the kitchen table again. But this time, she wasn't crying. She was searching, reading, looking up rights for disabled children, laws about accessibility. She wrote notes on a small notepad. She didn't know much about legal stuff, but she knew how to be a mother. And mothers don't give up. By midnight, she had bookmarked 5 government websites. She had found a few people online talking about similar stories. One of them had won a case against their HOA. She read every word carefully. She didn't know how long the road would be. She didn't know if she would win. But she knew one thing. She wasn't removing that ramp. Not while her son needed it. As the house stayed silent, she opened her phone and took a picture of her son smiling on the ramp from earlier. She looked at it for a long time and then whispered to herself, "They can call it ugly, but to me, this is beautiful." She turned off the lights and went to bed. But her heart was no longer tired. It was strong. The next morning, she opened The curtain slowly. Her eyes went straight to the ramp. It stood there quietly, like always. But now, it felt different. Like it was being watched, judged. Her son was still sleeping, holding his small toy car close to his chest. She quietly made breakfast, trying not to think about the hateful note she had found yesterday. While pouring tea, her phone buzzed. Another email from the HOA. She opened it with shaky fingers. The message was cold. It said they were giving her an official warning. If she didn't take down the ramp within 5 days, they would fine her daily. The amount wasn't small. It was more than she could afford. They even said that legal action could follow. She sat down at the table, her hands covering her face. She had lived in that neighborhood for 6 years. She had always paid her dues on time. She had kept her garden neat, her home clean. No one ever had a problem with her, until now. Until the ramp, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from one of the neighbors. It said, "It's nothing personal, but the ramp makes the block look cheap." That broke her. Not just the words, but the tone. Cold, careless. As if her son's life didn't matter. As if his needs were less important than how the street looked. She didn't reply. She couldn't. She just closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Later that day, her son asked if he could go outside. She smiled and said yes. He rolled down the ramp happily, just like before. But this time, she noticed a curtain move in the house across the street. Someone was watching, judging. She looked back at her son. He was laughing at the clouds, not knowing anything. That laughter reminded her why she couldn't give up. When they went back inside, she picked up her notebook again. She had already written down a few disability laws the night before. Now she searched for stories, real stories. She found one about a family in another state who had also been told to remove their ramp. They fought, and they won. That gave her hope that she began typing up her own story. Not for the court yet, but for the world. She wrote with her heart, about her son. About the joy he felt using the ramp. About how people who never offered help were now demanding silence. She uploaded a photo of her son, sitting on the ramp with a big smile. She posted the story online, unsure if anyone would care. But within an hour, the likes started coming in. People commented. Strangers from across the country sent her messages. They told her she wasn't alone. They told her they were proud of her. Some shared their own battles with HOAs. Some were moms just like her. Others were disabled people who had faced similar judgment. By evening, her story had spread fast. A small local news page even reposted it, then another. One woman offered to connect her with a lawyer who worked for a disability rights group. The mother didn't know how to react. She was just trying to protect her son. But now, her quiet story was being heard. The next day, a reporter knocked on her door. The mother hesitated. She wasn't used to cameras. But she thought of her son and how many others like him needed ramps, not shame. So she said yes. She spoke carefully, holding her son's hand during the interview. She didn't say anything bad about the HOA. She just spoke about love, about dignity, about how a simple wooden ramp changed her son's life, and how cruel it was to call it ugly. That night, she watched the video online. Her son was giggling, seeing himself on screen. "I look famous," he said. She smiled and nodded, hiding the tears in her eyes. Not tears of sadness, but something else. Something stronger. Then her phone rang. It was the same HOA office. A man this time. He didn't sound angry, he sounded nervous. He asked if they could talk calmly and work something out. But the mother, still soft-spoken, said she had already found legal help, and she would not be removing the ramp. "This is not a fight I asked for," she told him gently. "But it's one I won't walk away from." After hanging up, she sat quietly on the porch. The stars above were bright. Her son had gone to bed, still smiling. The ramp was quiet, solid, and full of meaning. She ran her hand along its wood. It felt rough but strong, just like her journey. Just like her heart. She looked up and whispered, "Let them come. I'm ready." The next morning, the mother woke up to find her phone full of messages. Some were from strangers, others from local reporters, and a few from disability rights groups. Her story had now reached people she had never met. Many were offering support. Some just wrote kind words like, "You're a brave mom," or "Thank you for speaking up." She read each one slowly, her eyes wet but her heart strong. After making breakfast for her son, she sat down and called the lawyer one of the commenters had mentioned. The woman on the other end of the phone had a warm voice. She introduced herself and said she had read the news story. She wanted to help, and she wouldn't charge a single dollar. The mother felt her hands shake as she held the phone. Someone believed in her, someone powerful. That afternoon, they met at a small coffee shop nearby. The lawyer listened carefully. As the mother shared everything, every email, every note, every phone call from the HOA, the lawyer nodded, took notes, and finally said, "They've crossed the line. You have rights, and we're going to use them." For the first time in weeks, the mother felt like she wasn't alone. They filed a formal complaint the next day. The lawyer sent a legal notice to the HOA, asking them to stop all threats and cancel the fines. She included documents about the Fair Housing Act and rights for disabled people. The letter was strong but respectful. The HOA didn't reply. Not for 2 days, but the silence didn't mean peace. On the third day, the HOA sent a formal legal notice back. They still wanted the ramp gone. They claimed it lowered the neighborhood value and that the family had not followed the design approval process. They didn't mention the boy. Not once, not his needs, not his disability, not his safety. The mother read the letter slowly. Her jaw clenched. She wasn't just angry, she was hurt. These people knew about her son, yet they chose to ignore him like he didn't matter. But she didn't cry this time. She picked up her pen and wrote something new. "They may not see my son, but the world does." Her lawyer told her to prepare for court. It wouldn't be easy, but the case was solid. She would need to speak in front of a judge, tell her story again, and show all the evidence. The mother nodded. She was nervous but ready. Meanwhile, her story continued to spread. A national TV show reached out. They wanted her and her son to appear. She said no, she didn't want to turn this into fame. But she gave them permission to use her story. She just wanted people to understand what so many families go through in silence. One evening, a small envelope came in the mail. There was no return address. Inside, there was a simple note. "We were wrong. Keep the ramp. We're sorry." It was unsigned, but she recognized the handwriting. It belonged to the same neighbor who had once said the ramp made the block look cheap. She stood on her porch, holding the note. She didn't smile, but her heart softened. Maybe not everyone was heartless. Maybe some people were finally starting to see. But the court date was still set. The mother spent her nights preparing. She looked through documents with the lawyer, wrote down dates, printed emails, and gathered photos. One photo stood out. Her son on the ramp, holding a small flag he had made in school, waving it proudly. That photo, she decided, would go into court with her. The day before the hearing, she sat down with her son. She didn't want to scare him, so she kept it simple. She told him that some people didn't understand why the ramp was important, but that she was going to explain it to them. He nodded and said, "Tell them I love my ramp. Tell them I feel like a superhero when I go down." That night, she didn't sleep much. She wasn't afraid of speaking. She was afraid of being ignored, of the judge seeing the case as just a rule issue, not a human one. But the next morning, as she dressed in her plain gray coat and tied her son's shoes, she reminded herself. She wasn't doing this for fame, not for revenge, not for pride. She was doing it for a boy who just wanted to feel free. They took a cab to the courthouse. Her son held her hand tightly. When they entered the courtroom, the air felt cold. The HOA's lawyer was already there, papers neatly stacked. But the mother wasn't intimidated. She had her own papers too. And a heart full of truth. As the judge entered, she whispered to herself, "Whatever happens today," I spoke up. I stood tall, and as her son squeezed her hand gently, she smiled. No matter the result, she had already won something big. Her fear was gone. The courtroom was quiet. People sat in wooden benches, some looking serious, others just curious. The mother sat beside her lawyer, holding her son's small backpack on her lap. Her son stayed outside with a volunteer from the court, who promised to keep him company and bring him in only if needed. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Then the hearing began. The HOA's lawyer spoke first. He used words like neighborhood appearance, regulations, and property value. He pointed to papers and showed pictures of the ramp. He said it looked unfinished and disruptive. He didn't mention the child. Not once. The mother sat still, eyes on the floor. Her lawyer whispered, "Don't worry. Just tell your truth." Then it was her turn. She stood up slowly, her hands slightly shaking. She walked to the front and looked at the judge. She didn't use big words. She didn't have to. She talked like a mother. She told the court how she carried her son up and down the steps every day before the ramp. How her back hurt, but she never said a word. She told them how her son smiled the first time he rolled down the ramp all by himself. He felt free, she said softly. That ramp may look like wood and nails to you, but to my son, it's wings. She held up the photo. Her son, sitting on the ramp, holding a small flag and smiling big. She didn't say anything for a moment. She just let the photo speak. Then she continued. We didn't ask for special treatment. We just wanted to live, to breathe, to go outside without feeling like a problem. Her voice didn't shake. She was calm, clear, and strong. When she finished, the judge didn't speak right away. He looked through the files. Then he looked at her. And then finally, he spoke. He said the law was clear. The Fair Housing Act protected families with disabilities. It was illegal to deny them reasonable changes to access their home. He said the HOA's rules didn't come above federal law. And then he said the words the mother had been praying to hear. The ramp stays. A silence filled the room. The HOA lawyer sat down, saying nothing. The mother blinked, not sure if she heard it right. Then her lawyer smiled and whispered, "You did it." The judge added that the HOA must stop all fines, remove all warnings, and update their rules to make sure this never happened again. He even thanked the mother for bringing attention to an important issue. She nodded, holding back tears. She didn't want to cry here. Not now. Not in front of the people who tried to shame her. When she walked out of the courtroom, her son ran to her and hugged her tightly. "Did we win?" he asked. She smiled and said, "Yes, baby, we won." That evening, they sat outside on the ramp, eating ice cream together. It was a quiet moment. No reporters. No court. Just a mother and her son, sitting on a piece of wood that meant the world. She looked around. No one was staring this time. Some neighbors even waved. One older man from across the street walked over slowly. He handed her a small plant in a pot. "I judged you too fast," he said. "This is for your porch." She took it with a soft thank you. Maybe people were starting to understand. Later that week, a news channel aired a short piece about her case. They called her the mother who fought for a ramp and won for many. She didn't care much about the title. What touched her more were the comments online. People from other states saying, "I'm going to build my daughter a ramp now." Or, "You gave me courage." A month later, the lawyer invited her to speak at a small event for families of children with disabilities. She didn't think she was strong enough to give a speech. But her lawyer said, "You already gave the most powerful speech in court." So she stood in front of 20 families, most of them tired, just like she once was. She told them, "You don't need to be loud, you just need to speak. Even a quiet voice can shake the ground when it speaks the truth." The room clapped, some cried. Some hugged her afterward. She went home that night, looked at her ramp, and smiled. It was still rough, still unpainted, still just wood and nails. But now it stood as a symbol of strength, of love, of one mother who refused to back down, not because she wanted attention, but because her son deserved freedom. And she gave it to him, not with money, not with power, but with heart. Life slowly returned to normal. The ramp stayed where it was, and the boy continued using it every day. But something inside the mother had changed. She wasn't the same quiet, worried woman who once cried in silence. She had found her voice. And now, others were beginning to hear it too. A few weeks after the court hearing, she received a message from another mother. This woman lived in a different state. She had a daughter in a wheelchair, and her local housing board was giving her trouble about a similar ramp. She had read the court story online. She didn't ask for advice, she asked for hope. The mother wrote back, not as a lawyer, not as an expert, but as someone who understood. She said, "You are stronger than you know. Don't let them scare you. Fight, because your child deserves freedom too." That message was the first of many. More parents, families, and even grandparents reached out. Some were angry, others scared, but most just felt alone. And every time she replied, she felt her words getting stronger, more confident. She wasn't just helping her son anymore, she was helping others believe they could stand up too. Soon, a small community group invited her to speak about her experience. She didn't wear anything fancy. She showed up with her son, holding his hand. She shared the full story, how the ramp was built with love, how the HOA tried to remove it, and how she fought back. The room was full of quiet nods and soft tears. One woman whispered, "Thank you. I didn't think someone like me could speak up." After that day, she decided to do more. She started writing short posts online about disability rights and simple ways neighbors could support each other. She didn't lecture or complain, she just shared real moments. A photo of her son smiling on the ramp. A story about a kind stranger who helped lift the wheelchair at the grocery store. A few words about how powerful it is when people choose kindness. People started following her posts. Not in the thousands, but enough to know her voice mattered. A small local paper called her the Ramp Mother, and though the name made her laugh, it stayed with her. One morning, she got a phone call from a city official. They had seen her story and wanted her help in reviewing new community rules for housing developments. They needed someone who had lived through the struggle. She was surprised. She had never worked with city people before. She was just a mom, but she said yes. And she showed up with her usual soft smile and a list of real things families needed. Soon, she became a regular voice in local meetings. Not loud but always clear. She wasn't there to argue. She was there to remind people that rules should never come before people. One afternoon, her son came home from school with a drawing. It was of a house with a long ramp and a smiling sun. He wrote on top, "My house is happy." She held the paper close and told him, "That's the best award I've ever received." More than a year passed. The ramp stayed strong. Her son grew taller, more confident, and more independent. The neighbors who once judged her had changed too. One even added a ramp to his home after his mother-in-law moved in. He told her, "I never understood before, but now I do." That made her feel proud, not because people changed their minds, but because kindness had reached them. Looking back, she never thought a small ramp would turn into something so big. She had only wanted to help her son. She never planned to go to court, never thought she'd speak to officials, never dreamed she'd become a voice for others. But life has a strange way of turning pain into purpose. One quiet evening, she and Her son sat on the porch. The sun was going down. The ramp beside them glowed softly in the light. Her son looked up at her and asked, "Did we help other people too?" She smiled and wrapped her arm around him. "Yes," she said, "and we'll keep helping." He nodded, then leaned against her shoulder. And in that moment, everything felt right. The fight was over. But the message would live on. Because when one mother stood up for her child, she showed the world what real strength looks like. And it all began with a simple wooden ramp and a love that refused to be silent.